I'd like to call this meeting of the Select Special Information and Privacy Commissioner Search Committee to order and welcome everyone in attendance. My name is Jordan Walker, MLA for Sherwood Park and Chair of the committee. I'd ask that members and those joining the committee at the table introduce themselves for the record, and then I will call on those joining us remotely. We'll begin to my right.
Good morning, everyone. Emily Cyril Turton for the riding of Spruce Grove, Stony Plain.
Jason Steffen, MLA for Red Deer South.
Glenn Van Dyken, MLA Athabasca Barhead Westlock.
Mickey Amory, MLA Calgary Cross.
Scott Ellerby, Acting Director, Executive Search Services, Public Service Commission.
Maricel Samara Wong, Executive Search Consultant with Public Service Commission.
Good morning, John Carson, MLA for Edmonton West Henday.
Good morning, Kathleen Ganley, Calgary Mountain View.
Good morning, Lindsay Tisher, Human Resource Services, Legislative Assembly Office.
Good morning, Janet Laurie, Communications Services with the Legislative Assembly Office.
Good morning, Terry Turkowicz, Law Clerk.
Good morning, Jody Rempel, Committee Clerk.
Thanks. And then I'll call on those joining us remotely. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Good morning, Tracy Allard, MLA for Grand Prairie.
Thank you very much. For the record, I will note the following substitutions. Mr. Van Dyken for Mr. Long and Mr. Amory for Mr. Dreeshen. Now, a few housekeeping items to address before we turn to the business at hand. Further to the...
You don't have to when you're done.
Okay. Yeah, sure. A few housekeeping items to address before we turn to the business at hand. Further to the direction given by the Office of the Speaker, I would note that masks should be worn in the committee room at all times except when members are speaking. In addition, members are also encouraged to leave an appropriate amount of physical distance around the table. Please note that microphones are operated by Hansard, so members do not need to turn them off and on. Committee proceedings are being live streamed on the internet and broadcast on Alberta Assembly TV. And committee members are reminded to please have your camera on when you are speaking. Please set your cell phones and other devices to silent for the duration of the meeting. And I see Member Dang has entered, so if you could please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thomas Dang, MLA for Edmonton South.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, we'll move now to agenda item 1A, and before we proceed with other business today, I would note that this is the first meeting of this committee, and because we have members joining us remotely, we need to address the issue of teleconferencing and video conferencing before continuing. As all committee members are aware, Section 6 of the Legislative Assembly Act permits participation in a committee meeting by members by means of telephone or other communication facilities that permit all members participating in the meeting to hear each other if all members of the committee consent. As a committee, we have a few options as to how to address this matter. However, before we make a decision, I would like to remind committee members of the unique nature of search committees. For the majority of our mandate, we will be discussing the personal information of candidates who apply for the role of Information and Privacy Commissioner. It is anticipated that outside of today, meetings will occur almost entirely in camera. I think it is important that committee members attend our meetings in person whenever possible. I really would like to stress that. However, we should also be prepared to accommodate occasional extenuating circumstances such as Alberta winter weather that could arise. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic could also impact our work. Do other committee members have any thoughts regarding remote participation in search committee meetings? I open up the floor. Member Turton, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that the Select Special Information and Privacy Commission Search Committee permit committee members to participate by teleconference or video conference for the December 16, 2021 meeting.
Okay. All right, we have a motion before the floor right now. So, any other thoughts on that motion from members? Otherwise, we'll, any further thoughts? Or go ahead, Member Van Dyken.
I don't see the motion up on the board. I don't know if it's going to get up on the board, but Having served on other search committees in the past, it is really needs to be stressed that in person is by far the best way to accomplish the task at hand, and really need to encourage all members. I know I'm just substituting this morning, but I really need to encourage members. Your job is going to be probably better performed if you're able to do that in person.
Okay, there's the motion. Any other thoughts or comments from members? Okay, I'll ask only one question. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Going once, going twice. Jody, carried? Unanimously. And which it needs to be, it's unanimously carried. So that carries for today. Any other comments or anything on this agenda item in terms of remote participation in meetings for today at all? Okay, all right. So now we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Would a member move a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Member Turton moved that the December 16th, 2021 meeting agenda of the Select Special Information and Privacy Commissioner Search Committee be adopted as circulated. All in favor? Aye. Motion is carried. Thank you, members. We're on to agenda item number 3, the Search Committee orientation. First, mandate Government Motion 107. The mandate of this committee is found on Government Motion 107, which was agreed to by the Assembly on November 24th, 2021. Are there any questions regarding the committee's mandate? Seeing none, moving on to item 3B, Public Service Commission Executive Search. We have already gone around the table to introduce ourselves, but I would like to take a moment to provide committee members with a little more information on the support available to us throughout the search process. From the Public Service Commission, I would like to welcome Dot Ellerby, Director of Executive Search Services, and Maricel Somera Wong, Executive Search Consultant. Thank you. The team of professionals at Executive Search have assisted with the work of many search committees, including the current Select Special Child and Youth Advocate Search Committee, and they have generously agreed to support us throughout our mandate as well. Thank you for that. Now, the Legislative Assembly Office, of course, we will have support from this institution as well, including Shannon Dean, the Clerk of the Legislative Assembly, Lindsay Tisher, Director of Human Resources, Janet Laurie, Supervisor, Communication Services, and her colleagues, the staff of the committee's branch, as well as all those very important people who can always be found working hard behind the scenes, including Hansard, Information Technology and Broadcast Services, Legislative Assembly Security Services, and Parliamentary Council. Now, moving on to agenda item 3C, substitutions and attendance. As most of us are new to the search process, I would like to review and consider some of the practices that have been adopted by previous search committees. First of all, I would like to address the issue of substitutions. As you are all aware, the standing orders allow for an official substitute to be designated to participate in a committee meeting. However, in order to ensure consistency and fairness to candidates during the recruitment process, the members of previous search committees over several legislatures have agreed amongst themselves not to appoint substitutes once the officer selection process begins. I believe this has worked well for previous search committees, but I will leave it to the discretion of this committee as to whether or not we will plan to take a similar approach. Does anyone have any thoughts on this practice? I open the floor to members who might want to comment. Go ahead, Member Stefan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand the practice in terms of discouraging substitutions. If that's the case, I think it's quite important that we consider the ability for future meetings. Certainly during that process where there is an ability to participate virtually, given the discussion that we just had.
Okay. Any other further thoughts on that? Member Ganley, please go ahead.
Everybody may be surprised to hear this, but I would echo those comments. I think that in an instance where we are unable to substitute, that people may need to participate virtually just because of their other duties, because of parenting duties, because of icy roads, any number of things. So, thank you.
Any further thoughts on that? Or Member Van Dyken, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think the consideration is valid. The only concern I have is how does it transpire when it's in camera? A lot of the discussions in process will happen in camera, and I'm not certain that members are confident that that's able to actually happen without outside participation.
Member Ganley?
Sorry, I'm just a bit curious. I feel like you're just as able to do a meeting in camera in a virtual space as you are in a, I guess I'm just maybe not quite grasping what the concern is. I think usually the technology is pretty good at preventing random users of the internet from wandering into virtual rooms. So I feel like that can be achieved, but maybe if you could clarify a little bit just so I understand.
Member Van Dyken, and then Member Stefan.
Yeah, so technology is there to be able to have individuals participate, but then it's up to the individuals to ensure that they're enforcing the confidence of in-camera meetings in their space. Because at the end of the day, virtually, if it's through computer or whatever, like it's still in a space outside of a room where just member participants are allowed to participate.
Member Stefan, you had a comment.
I would appreciate those principles in terms of respecting the confidential nature of our in-camera meetings, and as well our reasonable efforts when possible to attend meetings in person, given the nature of what we'll be discussing. Having said all that, given the fact that road predictability is hard to predict, and the desire to not substitute in terms of this process, I would like to make a motion, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that for the duration of its mandate, the Select Special Information and Privacy Commissioner Search Committee permit committee members to participate by teleconference or video conference, subject to the committee in its discretion requiring members to attend in person at a particular meeting on passage of a motion to that effect at a previous meeting.
Thank you. So we have a motion before the floor. Okay, so before we go to that, Member Stefan, Member Dang had a comment as well. So go ahead, Member Dang.
Sure. I can actually wait for the motion to come up, and I can see if I want to speak to that.
Okay.
If that works.
Okay. So we have a motion before the floor, as I understand it, to Committee Clerk, with it requires unanimity. Yes. So I'll just ask one question. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? If so, please say so. Hearing none, the motion is carried. And I will now go to Member Dang. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit moot now, but I was just going to echo Mr. Stefan's comments a little bit, which may surprise a few people in the room, but I think that certainly it's going to be incumbent on members of the committee and any guests that are joining us for the in-cameras meetings, and I would hope that all members are able to maintain the confidentiality required for our process, and certainly recognizing the vast distances required for some members, and certainly the pandemic as well. I think that there are considerations that we'll be able to make. So, thank you. Okay, so what I think I'm hearing in terms of the will of the committee is everyone
is it agreeable that there will not be substitutions allowed from this meeting on? I hope I've heard. Do you have a comment, Glenn?
Yeah, I guess I would like to have an opinion
Yep.
of Parliamentary Council or of the Human Resources based off of the information that will be made available to committee members if they're comfortable with participation virtually of members and that members police themselves.
Yeah, go ahead, Jody.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am neither Parliamentary Council nor HR. However, I am the committee clerk for the other search committee that's currently active, looking for the Child and Youth Advocate. That committee has gone down a fairly similar route where they're discouraging substitutions as much as possible, but permitting remote participation, when necessary. We have developed a fairly, quite a secure system for document distribution now that is all electronic. It is all done through the internal committee website, and the documents that pertain to the applicants have special security on them so that they can only be opened and viewed by committee members. And they do also have an expiry and so on. So it does allow members to participate from any location and still see those documents. We also, with the video conferencing setup and teleconferencing setup, we're able to have extra security measures, as far as setting up lobbies before anyone can actually join the call and so on. And of course, the call is always being monitored by me, actually, when we're in the meeting.
Member Turton?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment and jump in real briefly. That as someone that's participating in the other search committee, I personally feel comfortable with the precautions that Ms. Rempel has alluded to in terms of protection, security of documents, as well as the personal conduct of many of the members involved. So knowing that that same process and procedures will be undertaken in this search committee, it actually makes me feel much more satisfied. So thank you.
Great. Okay. So later in the process, we will have to address the issue of interview attendance and participation. Again, this is something that has been addressed by previous search committees, and there has been agreement among committee members that only members who have been present for all candidate interviews in their entirety should participate in the final candidate selection, noting again that COVID could require future adjustments to our plans. Continuing on with this, does anyone have any thoughts on this or any comments at this point? Okay, seeing none. Finally, although the final candidate selection is months in the future, I would note that in order to maintain consistency, it is customary for all candidates to be interviewed in the same manner, either in person or by video conference. If the committee chooses to conduct in-person interviews with candidates, the practice is for these meetings to be held off-site to maintain the privacy of applicants. So now we're moving on to item 3D, committee members, confidentiality. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Did we pass the motion that was on the table?
Yeah, it was
Did
carried.
we actually pass it? I don't remember voting or anything.
Yeah, it was unanimous, yep.
Okay.
The teleconferencing motion,
Yep. Okay, so 3D, moving on to confidentiality of documents and proceedings, I want to ensure that everyone understands the importance of respecting the privacy of all applicants throughout the search process and afterwards. As previously noted, the majority of our meetings will be conducted in camera out of regard for the privacy of potential candidates. Most briefing materials are provided to committee members only and are not for further distribution. Any materials that could potentially identify a candidate or the status of an application will be made available to committee members only through a secure PDF document. Does anyone have any questions about this part of the process? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to agenda item 3E, search timeline and process. As you may know, the contract of the current Information and Privacy Commissioner, Jill Clayton, expires on January 31st, 2022. However, she may be amenable to remaining in the role for a short period beyond the expiry of her contract, and legislation permits her to do so for up to 6 months. Having said that, it is important for the committee to complete its recruitment and make a recommendation to the Assembly before the spring session has concluded. This deadline and other matters were considered in the preparation of the draft timeline that is included with the materials for today's meeting. Of course, as noted on the document, there are a number of things that may require some flexibility in this schedule. Nevertheless, it is still a useful tool for planning purposes. Does anyone have any questions about this document? Go ahead, Member Ganley.
I just wanted to point out, I mean, I think it obviously is important that we carry out our work as quickly as possible, but it would be very much appreciated on my part if we could signal meetings a little ahead of time. Sometimes a week is a bit difficult in terms of notice requirements, especially when you're dealing with childcare and rearranging that. So I feel like the sooner we set the meeting dates, the better from my perspective. Thanks.
Fair point. I see Member Allard also has a comment. Please go ahead, Member Allard.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member Ganley. I would actually concur with MLA Ganley on that. I think, particularly given the circumstances of no substitutions, I would really appreciate if we could potentially even schedule the next couple of meetings so that we can plan our calendars accordingly. I know with my schedule and my distance from Edmonton, I really have to think through the challenges. And then obviously with the COVID reality, who knows who's going to be where. So I just, to the best of our ability, the more that we can plan, the better it would be. So I appreciate that and I would concur.
Thank you, Member Allard and also Member Ganley. I think myself as the chair and also the LAO staff here have heard and we're hearing this a very important and totally reasonable, fair point. So duly noted. We're now moving on to agenda item 4, where we have some decision items, members. So first 4A, the draft Information and Privacy Commissioner position profile. Moving on to the decision items for the committee today, members should have a copy of the position profile document. Before we consider this document, I would like to remind everyone that it is not the mandate of this committee to determine the roles and responsibilities of the Information and Privacy Commissioner. These are set out in various pieces of legislation. What we are doing today is confirming that the profile accurately reflects the legislation and outlining the type of skills and education we may be looking for in a candidate. With this in mind, I would ask Ms. Tischer to please give us an overview of this document and the various considerations taken into account when drafting it. Ms. Tischer, please go ahead.
Certainly. Thank you. All right, so as you're all aware, a position profile needs to have 2 main elements captured: what the responsibilities of the role are and the delineation of the desired candidate attributes and experience. So while this profile is fairly extensive, it doesn't capture all of the to-dos of the Information and Privacy Commissioner. It captures the buckets of responsibility and the background and experience that somebody may stream in to, so that we can do some candidate screening. So in searching for executive talent, the approach is to focus less on the job-specific details and more about the outlook and the impact of the role. And so also what can be achieved in the role. And that's very, very important at a role at this level. As a legislative officer, they have immense responsibilities and the scope is quite extensive. So the draft profile that you've received for the Information Privacy Commissioner strives to deliver on those fronts and also act as a strong foundation for all of the following elements in the executive search process. So the last position profile for the Information and Privacy Commissioner was from 2011. Quite a bit has changed since then. So the steps that we took to update the profile included a review of the last utilized profile. Reviews were conducted of other legislative officer position profiles that are fairly well aligned with this from across Canada. A position analysis was conducted with the current incumbent. And, you know, we took into consideration the nature of the work performed, organizational cycles, internal characteristics, strategic plans, priorities, you know, climate factors, so not temperature, but environmental factors, and, you know, what's new, what's upcoming in the field of, you know, privacy and access to information. We also reviewed related documentation such as the annual reports and the 3 access and privacy laws, which are the foundation for this role. The initial draft that you see before you was prepared and reviewed with Ms. Clayton, and it's been reviewed from a number of different bodies to ensure that grammatically it flows, it captures the high points, and it's been also reviewed from you know, the Hansard point of view for their expert editing. So we have the draft profile in front of you for 2021.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Tischer, for that wonderful overview. Do we have any comments or questions? I see Member Allard has her hand raised. Please go ahead, Member Allard.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just had a couple of questions regarding the profile. I note that the Information and Privacy Commissioner is responsible for the Freedom of Information and Protection Act, the Health Information Act, and the Personal Information Protection Act, as well as reviewing the decisions by the Registrar of Motor Vehicle Services. Can you explain the rationale then for why the Financial Administration Act, Public Sector Commission Act, Public Sector Commission Transparency Act, Public Service Act, and the Public Interest Disclosure Act are specifically named in the list of authorities, rather than just included under other applicable legislation? I just want clarity on that.
They're specifically named. It was a practice that we started with the Child and Youth Advocate because they do pertain to the overall leadership and management of the financial and human resources within the office. So the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner.
Perfect. So just to follow up, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please go ahead, Member Allard.
Perfect. So I just want to clarify then the inclusion of these pieces of legislation in the authorities list does not change the legal mandate or authority of the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner. That's a no?
Correct. It does not change.
Okay. Perfect. So if I may, I'd like to move a motion, Mr. Chair.
Sure, go ahead, Member Allard.
So I would like to move that the Special Select Information and Privacy Commissioner Search Committee approve the position profile for the Information and Privacy Commissioner as distributed.
Okay, thank you so much for that motion, Member Allard, and we have it up here on the screen. Any comments or questions on this before we seek support for it? Seeing none, I'll just ask one question. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? If so, please say so. Hearing none, the motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. So now we're moving on to agenda item 4B. The draft advertising plan and advertisement copy. A draft communications plan along with sample ads have been prepared for our consideration by the LAO Communications Branch. I will ask Ms. Laurie to address this document, and then I'll open the floor to discussion. Ms. Laurie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the Chair just identified, we prepared a draft advertising plan and sample advertisements for the committee's review, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have and seek your direction on those pieces.
Please go ahead, Member Ganley.
Yes, I would like to move a motion. I believe you have it. Did you want me to read it into the record? All right. I would move that the Select Special Information and Privacy Commissioner Search Committee direct that the Legislative Assembly Office to, where reasonable, ensure that the final text of the advertising copy is revised to explicitly reference the job's requirement that the incumbent provide impartial comment and have the ability to recommend strategic and effective changes to the relevant legislative scheme and government programs related to access and privacy rights. Did you want me to wait for the text to come up before I speak to the motion?
Yeah, we'll bring up the text.
Ah, perfect. So basically, I think that the advertisement copy is good. The reason I'm suggesting putting this in, and I know sometimes the banners are small, so I'm just, I think I'm willing to leave a certain latitude for HR to determine how best to do that. I just am of the view that commenting on the legislation is a sort of conceptually different thing than simply sort of making decisions under the legislation. And I think it's important that candidates coming forward consider that, because what we don't want to do is have candidates looking at this and saying, well, I don't necessarily agree with the way the privacy legislation is working now. Like, what we want to do is attract people who are interested in these issues, who are committed to the concepts of freedom of information and privacy, and have potentially opinions about that, and potentially want to sort of recommend ways for this to work better. I think we all know that the system itself is not, it's working well. Like, information and privacy law is a comparatively recent development in the law relative to other things. I think it's working relatively well, but I think we all know that it's imperfect. So I just think it's worth kind of putting it out there in the advertisement that the individual doing this job would potentially be in a position to make these sort of strategic recommendations, because I think this is an area that's pretty critical to all of us in our daily lives. I think most people who get into government, who become legislators, think that access to information on how government is making its decisions and how it's doing its business is an incredibly important value. And I think we all know, and this cannot be rested at the feet of even just this current government or the previous government or even just the one before it, but we all know that the process is a bit backlogged, shall we say, owing to a number of factors. But I think that if someone were to come into this position and make recommendations on improvements, that could only possibly be a good thing. So those are my reasons for thinking that that's worth doing. And I think, I think the other thing worth highlighting in terms of the changes here is the sort of importance of impartiality and nonpartisanship. I think at least some of us in this room have been on both sides of the government opposition table, shall we say. And I think, it's incredibly important that these decisions are being made on substantive factors, not on factors sort of having to do with one's particular view of how the world is best served, shall we say. So I think it's incredibly important. I think this role is going to be, it has been in the past and will be in the future, incredibly critical. So I think it's worth, noting that in the advertisement so that everybody who might wish to apply for the position understands what this vital role entails.
Member Ganley for your comments. I'll go to Member Turton, and I think Member Allard also has comments, and I also then want to give Miss Laurie a chance to explain her own comments. I don't think you had a chance to do that yet, but Member Turton, go ahead. We also have Member Stefan.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to the member for putting forth the motion or questions. I guess I'll start off by saying, obviously, I have a tremendous amount of respect for our public service. They do incredible work, and I've always felt that the legislative staff here and all the staff working for the provincial government, and especially in these types of positions, have always been, I find, impartial and have been true professionals when it comes to putting forth that impartiality that the member talked about on the other side. I guess my question is that, where we just recently approved the profile, and it talked a lot about the ability to be impartial, non-political, and obviously to be that voice that I think everyone in this room is looking for. To me, it just seems a little redundant in terms of the communications profile to, again, mention that when all those exact points that the honourable member mentioned are in the profile that we all just recently approved. So I guess I would also like to get some questions from the communications team just to see how those points that all of us are looking for in the profile are, you know, communicated in the kind of the outward communications plan. So I think I would probably, you know, look for some guidance or some feedback in that regard.
Ms. Laurie?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the discussion. When we're preparing the advertisements and the advertising plan, we're essentially pulling everything from the draft profile. So as it's just been approved, we can, had there been any changes, we can go back, but we're pulling the information that we are using to describe the profile. And so given that when you're advertising for different, whether it's online or print, you're pulling, you can see that there are different sizes to the ads. There's different degrees of volume for the content that we're able to include and still make it, a compelling and readable piece of information. So some have more information than others simply due to the size. But what we've tried to do is pull the relevant pieces of information from the profile and include words like nonpartisan, provides fair and independent and impartial reviews in a timely and efficient manner. We've tried to pull out those key points, and regardless of the size of the ad, to ensure that they are there. And what we do with all of the advertising is drive everything back to the position profile, which is posted on our website, or will be posted on our website. I hope that addresses some of those questions.
Member Turton?
Yeah, sorry. I just one quick supplemental to that. So regarding the other search committee that's currently going forth, and the Child Youth Advocate, in terms of the process that committee moved forward, was there almost, I would say, redundant messaging in the communications plan to mirror what was in the profile for that committee, or would this be out of step with what is happening with the other committees that are in place right now?
No, this approach is very much in alignment with what we've done with previous search committees, and obviously most recently the Child and Youth Advocate position that is still ongoing.
Member Stefan, I saw that you had a comment.
Yeah, I agree with the spirit of the member from Calgary Mountain View. I agree with a lot of things that the member from Calgary Mountain View says. I really appreciate that. We do want to attract the best possible person to this role, and this individual will be a subject matter expert, you know, in respect of privacy matters. And we want to have this individual invested in making our processes, our legislative scheme as good as possible. So we should be open to, of course, the ability to have continuous improvement in our processes to be the very best that we can be. So in that regard, I do actually concur with what the member from Calgary Mountain View is proposing. I am a little bit concerned about the wording and making it a requirement for them to provide comments. Well, sometimes there isn't, you know, an issue. And so to require them to, I guess, manufacture comments where perhaps there is limited utility is something that you know, maybe the wording can be improved, but you know, I agree with the overall intent and having them invested in the process of trying to be as good as possible. But I'm not sure if it's a requirement for them to provide impartial comments. It's almost implied, I would assume, in the job description, but you know, that's just a comment that I have. I kind of agree with the spirit of what is being said. If it's redundant in respect of the job description, then I'm not sure if we need it. But as well, a requirement for them to provide where there may not actually be an issue. You know, perhaps there can be some refinement in that thought as well. Thanks.
So I saw, Member Dang, and then we'll go to Ms. Laurie, and then Member Turton. Member Dang, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I just want to comment a little bit about some of what Mr. Stefan said, but also comment about what my colleague, Ms. Ganley here had talked about. I guess overall, in terms of making it a requirement, I think it's just to point out where reasonable things that are already in the profile, right? Like in the profile, it already says that a major responsibility is providing comment and recommendations on legislative schemes. That's already in the profile, right? So I think that certainly, I think it's important that when we move forward, and I understand that in the Office of the Child and Youth Advocate search, that there was additional guidance given beyond the profile for advertising copy in that process as well. And I think that this is pointing out the impartiality, pointing out the nonpartisanship is so important in a role like the Information and Privacy Commissioner, because it is what is going to really govern or not govern, but oversee our privacy policy and regulatory system in Alberta, which impacts every Albertan, right? It impacts every single person in this room. It impacts every single person whoever has their data stored by a company in Alberta. And I think that's going to be something that we want to ensure it's highlighted, that this is a nonpartisan, this is an impartial role. And we're reasonable, as it says in the motion. I think it's going to be important that we make that a key factor.
Ms. Laurie, then Member Turton, then Member Van Dyken.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to quickly reiterate for the benefit of the members that much as we've pulled content for the advertising copy from the position profile, and we will use all of our promotions and advertising to draw interested people to the full profile on our website, we are happy to make any amendments that the committee members see fit, and we can, that's why the ads are in draft form for people to review. So we're happy to defer to the will of the committee on that.
Thank you, Ms. Laurie. Member Turton, then Member Van Dyken.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to kind of add to some of my previous comments. So while I understand and appreciate obviously the work that the public service has done with putting this forth, in regards to the motion put forth by the member across, I have no issues with it. Even though it's outside maybe perhaps of the process that's going on with other committees on right now, when I look at the wording, there's nothing, that says that this might not improve the process. It doesn't, I think, add a bunch of onerous work to the public service for making some potential revisions. And who knows, maybe this could be just a template moving forward in terms of reiterating and amplifying the fact that we do want that impartial candidate that is going to have the rights and interests of all of Albertans in place. So I will be supporting the amendment. I just wanted to kind of clarify, because I know it came across that I was maybe a little bit overly harsh, but I do look forward to a good working environment for this committee with all members, and so look forward to supporting this amendment. Sorry, motion.
Motion, yeah. Thank you, Member Turton. Member Van Dyken, please go ahead.
Thank you. I would suggest that the motion that's before us is somewhat redundant to what's already in the document. The document does read, this nonpartisan independent officer of the legislature. These are independent officers that are appointed overseeing very important work, and they're professionals. The committee is going to be evaluating them on those standards, and I would suggest that we have to be careful not to interfere with their independence by providing direction that the incumbent provide impartial comments. The incumbent will be able to understand their role as independent, nonpartisan. So I think where the intent is fine, I believe that the motion is riding on the edge of providing direction to the appointed officer.
Thank you, Member Van Dyken. Member Stefan, followed by Member Ganley.
Yeah, just a modest suggestion in respect to the wording and following on my colleague's comment. If we move the phrase "have the ability to," to follow right after the word incumbent. Then it says that the incumbent have the ability to provide impartial comments and recommend strategic, and then kind of finish the sentence. But then we're not compelling. We're just saying you have the ability to, you know, and I think that's probably falls in line with the spirit of, you know, it's just a modest thought, just to perhaps make it permissive rather than mandatory in terms of the language of the comments part.
Thank you, Member Steph. Member Ganley, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to clarify with respect to the motion, because maybe I didn't say it explicitly, but so the job requirements we approved in the last segment of the agenda, and they are major responsibilities, and they include providing comments and recommendations on legislative schemes. What this motion is suggesting is just that we make that wording explicit in the advertising copy. So this wouldn't change in any way the requirements of the job. I'm just suggesting that I think that this these particular points in the job description that are already part of the job description ought to be highlighted in the ad, because I think it will sort of catch the eye. Like, some people will click on an ad and there's numbers that are run on how many people actually click on the ad and go through to the sort of position profile after that. I'm just suggesting that this go into the ad because it will sort of attract more or slightly different people to click on the ad. And to look at the job profile and potentially sort of go down the whole process. So that's all this is meant to change, is just the advertising copy, not the actual job description.
Thank you. So seeing any other further comments or thoughts, I'll ask all those committee members, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. Okay. Motion carried. Thank you, committee members, for that great discussion. So now we're moving on to agenda item 5.
She's amended it, so now she probably wants to. Has she amended it? Well, yes, this passed, so she's made that amendment. And so now she'll want to have it approved as, so she wants it as distributed, that should be as revised.
So I get her to move the motion.
Well, someone needs to move the motion that it be approved as revised.
Could I have someone please move the motion that this be approved as revised? Member Dang? Thank you very much. Go ahead.
So what's being approved as revised? I'm not sure what's being done here. Like, I guess we passed a motion that's given direction.
Go ahead.
What have we approved?
There's been this motion amends what is in the current plan that was distributed, the current advertising and communications plan. So if there's no further direction on it, we now need a motion to approve it as revised, so according, to the direction that's been given here.
Go ahead, Ms. Laurie. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just add to that, as I said, we're of course happy to make any edits and revisions to the advertising material based, as I alluded to in my initial remarks, based on the different sizes for different advertisements, publications, be they online, be they print. If we're adding in a block of text of this size, we are by necessity removing some other information. And so I'm not sure if the committee, I just flagged that. I'm not sure if we should go ahead with those decisions or work with the committee clerk and the chair to finalize that advertising copy in the end.
Member Turton, please go ahead.
Yeah, I guess just a point of clarification, if I may, is that when I see the motion that Member Ganley put forth, it does, while it says that the wording of the communications plan will encompass that, it doesn't, I believe, give actual direction to move forward with putting forth the plan out, or I stand to be corrected, it seems like as if we may be missing an initial motion first for direction, and then this one would add extra clarification to the motion, and that is just my interpretation of what I see here. Or if I'm completely wrong, then that's fine as well.
Or someone.
Yes, so the decision item is how the committee wishes to proceed with regards to communications and advertising. So a proposal was put forward and distributed for consideration. Ms. Ganley has had a suggestion to make. She brought it forward as a motion, which this committee has approved. So we will include that direction. There could be other directions. Of course, nothing was put on notice, but there could be other directions. If there's not, then we're just now approving then that everything proceed. Yeah.
Member Van Dyken?
So if I'm hearing correctly, the motion that we've just passed, the motion that was passed, Member Ganley put forward, it is going to change the package significantly to the point of possibly having to reword the advertising document, in which could have impact on content within there, but also on pricing. And so therein lies the difficulty with approving a package that's been put before us and then amending it, and we cause delay in needing approvals of the amended package unless this committee is willing to just leave it in the hands of the chair and deputy chair to actually approve. But that will have to be a consideration, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Any further comments on this? So,
to approve in the final copy as needed, something like that. Addresses his concern.
yeah, so Member Dang, were you including something here as a motion?
I suppose, Mr. Chair, you had asked for a motion perhaps to move on to the next decision point, and I was prepared to move that at that time. I would be happy to withdraw that if that is procedurally better.
Yeah. So,
Putting something up on the screen, he can look at it.
yeah.
Is that what he?
Yeah, so Member Dang, what Ms. Rempel is doing right now is putting something up on the screen for your consideration to see if it captures the intent of your comments. Yeah.
Yes, I can move this motion at this time. Do you want me to read it, or?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sure. And of course, we'll have some time to comment on it and make some debate as well, right? So, but I'd move that the Select Special Information and Privacy Commissioner Search Committee approve the communications plan and advertisement copy as revised, and that the chair be authorized to approve any final copy as necessary.
Thank you very much, Member Dang. Any comment or question on this?
Yeah, I just have a few general comments, I guess, and then perhaps a couple questions that we'll be able to get some guidance or some help with. I guess overall, I think I'm like Mr. Turton had said earlier. I have a lot of faith in our public service here, and I have a lot of faith that we'll be able to have a thorough process. I guess that one of the things that I want to clarify, that we have the chair approving the final copy, but perhaps prior to that, it would be distributed one final time to the members of the committee, and we'd have a chance to take a look at it again and make comments to you, perhaps virtually before you get that final approval. give that final approval. And I think that certainly also it is one of those things I'm hoping we can just agree to fairly informally, because I think it's a process that we want to move along, but we want to have eyes on before it goes forward. Is that agreeable?
Yeah. And so do we have any other comments or questions? Member Carson?
Excuse me, just to that point of making sure that the membership of the committee has had the opportunity to review and provide comments. If that's something that needs to be explicitly said in the motion, then I think that we should potentially consider that. But if that doesn't need to be the case, then okay.
Churton? Oh, you had a comment too, Member Ganley? Did you have? Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I guess just a question for myself is, and I'm okay with the motion by Mr. Dang in terms of as revised. I guess my question is that since we've already approved the extra revisions, it kind of encapsulates the communications plan, the profile's already been locked down. I guess I don't see the reason to have the last part in terms of the chair be authorized to approve final copy, because as far as from my perspective, we already approved what we want in the communications plan and the member profile. So I don't see any additional changes that would have to take place from what we've already talked about today. So I guess some questions, clarification for myself about why that last part of the sentence would be required.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, no, sorry, Ms. Rempel.
Sorry.
And then Ms. Ganley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, the wording was put in to address some of the comments that, you know, were being made about would this potentially, you know, impact the costs, or what about text that may have to come out in order to put this in. So that's why this was, I suppose you could say, added to just the first part of the motion, which would approve that it proceed as revised. But, you know, of course, it's at the committee's discretion if it wishes, if anyone wants to propose further amendment to the motion, and if the committee wishes, you know, to hear said amendment.
Thank you. Member Ganley, then I think Member Van Dyken, and then Member Stefan.
Yeah, I was just going to add that the motion we just passed, the one that I moved, had suggested that we insert certain language into the advertising copy where reasonable. So presumably, folks are going to take that away, and some of the ads have sort of more banner space or less banner space, or some things, right? Like, I imagine that text will go in some circumstances and not in others. So I think the purpose of this motion is just to ensure that once that advertising copy is updated, there's a process to approve it that doesn't require recalling the entire committee. I would simply suggest that I might like to make an amendment to this, and I know that neither the motion nor the amendment were provided the 3 days in advance, so I'm not sure procedurally whether I need unanimous consent, but the amendment I would suggest would just be communications plan and advertisement copy revised, and that the chair be authorized to approve the final copy as necessary, and then I would just add a comma and say after a consultation with members of the committee.
Thank you, Member Ganley. So
First, the committee has to decide if it's going to do it.
okay. So Member Ganley stated she would like to move an amendment if allowed and procedurally. So just wondering if members have any comments on this. We do have Standing Order 52.041 in place, but go ahead, Member Stefan.
Yeah, I would prefer us not to quite get into the weeds as much here. What constitutes consultation, as my colleague will know, has been the subject of litigation. And I I do support this motion as originally made. I don't want to see the committee delegate its oversight and stewardship, and I trust an initial or a final review and approval by the chair to be reasonable and balanced. I'm not sure if I really want this consultation really mean effectively having a de facto additional meeting on the final copies. I'm not really sure. I'm fine with what's been proposed here, and I trust the stewardship of the chair to act in good faith and to be thorough in just approving the final copy that is being proposed.
Member Van Dyken, please go ahead. I think, did you have a comment?
Not on the amendment.
You have a comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wanting to clarify my previous comment that this committee has already approved Ms. Ganley's motion as far as making, as far as amending the plan and the advertisements. Any changes, like we're now bound then to make any changes to these ads in the spirit of the direction that's been given by the committee. So that's already been confirmed because of, some concerns that were raised about possible changes to costs and so on. Again, that's why there was the addition of the latter part of this motion, but.
I'm just going to call a quick 5-minute recess. We'll meet back here at 10:07. Thank you, guys. So does anyone else have any comments on this? Anything to add? Member Turton?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to put forth an amendment that would say the Select Special Information and Privacy Commissioner Search Committee authorize the Chair and Deputy Chair to approve a position profile for the Information and Privacy Commissioner by Tuesday, December 21st, 2021, following the distribution of a revised draft profile document to committee members for review and comment.
If he wants to make an amendment to add in the part about distributing it.
Yeah, can you say that on record?
I can't rule it out of order.
Yes. So, Member Turton, that currently is out of order, and so, Jody.
If this is just about ensuring it's shared,
Yeah.
we can work on that with the motion that's on the floor, just making an amendment to it.
Yeah, so if this is about this issue here, they can work with you on this. Jody, could you comment on that? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just note that the position profile itself has already been approved by the committee. So what we're dealing with now is the communications and advertising portion of things. I don't want to assume too much. Is it the intention of the member to amend the current motion that's on the floor just to include that that the draft ads will be redistributed to committee members for comment prior to final approval? Is that
Yes.
where we're going with
Yeah,
the-
so my
the intention?
mistake. I unfortunately put position profile. I was getting too mixed up. I was meaning communications profile, so that's my mistake.
So we could say,
Did you have a comment? Go, Member Ganley, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not sure if this is best raised by a point of order. I just wanted to clarify what happened with, because I think I had proposed a sub-amendment, and I believe we have to deal with that first. Now, my understanding is because the motion and any sub-motions were not sent in ahead of time or whatever, that I needed unanimous consent. So it may be the case that the chair considered Mr. Steffen's objection to be a refusal of a unanimous consent. If we could clarify procedurally where we are, that would be helpful to me.
thank you for the question. There was no final vote called before the committee took a break. So currently there is a request to have an amendment put on the floor, at which point we would work on the exact wording of what that amendment was, regardless of which member chooses to move it. But if we want to first have a vote about permitting an amendment on the floor, that would clarify everything.
Yeah, so are you understanding?
What the status of my attempt to amend this motion was. Did we already get rid of that? Is it still on the floor? Because we can't, maybe you can amend an amendment to the motion. I just want to make sure we all know what we're doing.
It's not on the floor yet.
Yeah, okay.
The committee has to decide whether they will permit it or not.
Yeah, so the amendment is not on the floor yet, Ms. Ganley, because the committee has to decide if they will permit the amendment on the floor. Yeah, so any comments on that before I go to a vote?
And sorry, which amendment, my amendment or Mr. Jordan's amendment?
Yours.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so members, all those in favor in allowing Member Ganley's amendment, please say aye. Okay, all those opposed, please say no. Okay.
The agreement has been reached here because it's majority.
Yeah.
So now we'll just have to get the exact wording.
Okay, so the agreement has been reached to hear that. So now we'll just get the correct wording. Yep.
For the benefit of the room, and to make this work a little bit easier, I know my colleague here had a little bit of wording in mind already, but I think Mr. Turchin had some wording in mind. Perhaps we could recess for 2 minutes just to compare and see if there's something that we can come to, that we can work on together.
Yeah, sure. Let's take maybe a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back here at 10:17 roughly. Thank you guys so much. Go ahead, Member Ganley.
Yes, I would, after due communication with my colleagues in the hope that we have agreement here, move that the motion be amended to insert and the deputy chair after the chair, and insert after it has been distributed to the committee members for comment, after as necessary.
Thank you, Member Ganley. Any comments or anything on this before I go to vote for the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of this amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Motion carried. Thank you so much, members.
So the amendment has carried.
Yeah. So that amendment has carried.
No, now you vote on Mr. Dang's motion.
So now we'll vote on Mr. Dang's motion. Does he need to reread it, or Jody, or no? It's okay.
No, but it,
Go ahead.
or I can.
Would the members
Okay,
like,
thank you.
go ahead, Jody,
Sorry.
you read the motion.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, just for clarification, the committee is now going to need to address Mr. Dang's motion as amended. I can attempt to read it out as it would be with the amendments in it. I believe it would read that the Select Special Information Privacy Commissioner Search Committee approve the communications plan and advertisement copy as revised, and that the chair and deputy chair be authorized to approve any final copy as necessary after it has been distributed to committee members for comment.
Thank you very much. So members, any questions or comments on this? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Motion is carried. Thank you, members. So back to the main. Yeah, and we're back to the main agenda item number 5, other business. Do members have anything for discussion under other business? If not, we'll move on to the date for the next meeting. Seeing none, agenda item number 6, the next meeting. As set out, you want to go? As set out in the next timeline, part of the recruitment campaign for the Information and Privacy Commissioner position will occur later in January. Our next meeting will be scheduled for late February or early March to ensure applicants have a reasonable time to respond to our advertisements and to allow for the processing and organization of applications by our support team prior to our review. Would a member make a motion to adjourn, please? Member Stefan moves that the December 16th, 2021 meeting of the Select Special Information and Privacy Commissioner Search Committee be adjourned. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion, you just want to keep talking. The motion is carried. Would the participants in the room please remember to take your cups and disposables when you leave the table? Thank you, everyone, very much.